Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mid-Trap podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Not much. Busy week, man, but talking rap with you always makes it seem to go by a bit faster. So I'm ready to jump into Enemy at the Gates tonight.
Yes, it does. I always look forward to these nights. I don't dread, but I want to get everything perfect, and we just went through, 30 minutes of pre-pro. But we actually put time into these things. These aren't just off the cuff podcasts. So, but once we're getting into it and doing it and talking, it just flows. I love it. So,
do you think we do too much planning in that, like, the meat of our episodes and the good stuff is just our banter back and forth, kind of when we go off the cuff? Or do you think we're stronger when we have, like, we're going to talk about this topic and then this topic, and then, of course, Martini has a quote to read, kind of like when we're free-flowing?
I think it's a combination of both. I like
True.
when we're free-flowing, and then you can, boom, you have this quote, boom, pull it in.
About the topic, yeah.
About the topic.
A little bit of balance.
When we first started this podcast, you should see our notes. They were, super meticulous. I mean, it was mid-pandemic, so we had plenty of time.
We were a mess.
And we were also
a mess.
getting a hold on it. So they've definitely, we figured out a rhythm with these things, and I think people are enjoying it. I hope. I
also wonder how many people listened to our trailer, our first episode, and were like, "This audio is shit. I'm not listening to it." I wish we had the equipment right off the bat, because by episode 8 or 10, we got pretty good with the sound quality. But those first few, man.
It was pretty rough. I almost want to go back and re-record our first episode,
right?
Just to hook people in better.
Well, you know what we have to do? Maybe we record a trailer and replace that trailer, which is kind of like a little mini intro episode of a few minutes with our good audio, so people know we're actually legit.
We're legit podcasters. Yeah, we'll do it for season 2 for sure.
There we go. Season 2. Ooh, look at that. A little drop. But we'll save that discussion for another couple of months.
TBD. It's coming up faster than you know.
That's true. It's true. Hey, can I address something from part 1 that I missed?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. We were talking about humor. And a lot of the humor we often talk about is with Mitch. And he becomes a little more lighthearted. And we're the evil domestic spirit. But Scott is funny as hell in this book.
He's very funny.
When we land in Africa and Scott has his feet up in a baby pool and he's calling out $1,000 every minute to say how much Ward is paying him. And he's like, oh, another 1,000. That's funny.
That's so funny. I actually found myself doing that the other day. And I think now that you mentioned it, I realized I probably took it from this book. I was doing this experiment and I was using something that's each little thing is like $8, and I mean, I don't pay for it. You do. I do pay for it through my taxes, and everyone listens to it. It's government tax money. But as I'm messing up with these little tweezers, every time I mess up, I was like, boom, $8, $8 down the drain. I was like,
you're
fuck.
wasting money where Scott is earning that dough by sitting with his feet up in Africa. I think they drink a lot of beers in this book.
This book has a lot of alcohol.
Rap cracks a beer like 5 or 6 times. With
a homebrew. Ward is a homebrewer. I like that.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Rap doesn't take me as the kind of guy that would enjoy a homebrew, though. If you wanted to talk about autumnal meads and, double, triple dry hop, sticky IPAs, Rap's just give me the Bud Light. Give me the Miller Lite.
Rap's just give me the Bud Light. Sit at the fire, the back of the house, watch the Chesapeake Bay, because he did that in his old house. But I feel like Scott would get experimental because he's also a farmer.
True.
His thing, his comfort zone, is back in Manassas with Anna raising, what's the goat's name? That's a deep cut. Anna's
mutton chop.
No, I think that's one of them. One of them has a distinct name that came up 3 or 4 times.
She might even mention it in this book.
No, I think so. I think they do. But Scott loves farming with her, and he's riding his tractor with the skulls and the flames on the side in his dream, and he's dreaming about Sonia from Total Power.
That was funny too. He actually wakes up because out of instead of Sonya's like Russian accent, it's like, what is it, Joe Mazlick's deep voice?
That's
like,
right. Cuts him out of his
that,
dream.
That was funny. That was really funny.
He's dreaming about that sweet, sweet cash money he could put into a new tractor to ride on with Sonya.
That's funny.
Oh, here's another little detail. When we get to the Saudi Arabia part today, you remember that Mitch was a Bruce Springsteen fan? You got a couple of Bruce references in Lethal Agent and something earlier. Well, here, his ringtone is Fortunate Son. Got a little CCR on the rap playlist here. I like that.
Rap loves his, his classic rock, I guess.
There was a Pete Seeger drop at one point, too.
Yeah,
that's
what
rap would have rather been listening to.
I remember, what was the one book where he had like, I don't know, he had picked up like this cassette and it was just like disco or techno or something. Eurotrash, he called it, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when he said, I would have rather been listening to like Pete or Bob Seger or one of them, or some Bruce.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, CCR added to the playlist. We need a Mitch Rap podcast Spotify playlist to push out.
Good. Let's do that.
Let's get some ideas from the listeners. If you were to hack Rap's iPhone and see his playlist, what songs are on it? Hit us up. Facebook, Insta, Twitter.
That also, I posted little picture of who would you cast as the cooks,
right?
And for Nicholas Ward. So very interested to see who you guys, based on our Pod 1 discussion, we talked about our casting. Who you guys would cast? So hit us up on the socials.
I got some interesting submissions from Rod Gregg. He had a whole cast planned out for everybody in this book, even down to like David Chisholm, like he was cast in. So we'll have to read that out at the next one, or maybe a rap on rap for our patrons.
Okay.
All right. Well, what scenes are we breaking down here, Chris, on our race to the end of Enemy at the Gates?
All right. So today we are covering, I guess, the last 2/3 of the book. We're going to kick it off with the attack on the compound. We left off, or we're picking up right when Irene and what's his name? Marcus.
Your boy.
My boy get a hint that there's a mole, and then this leads to the planting of information, the bait and switch.
But hold on, we got to get into that because this is one of Kennedy's shining moments. When Marcus comes in, he hasn't changed a bit. I imagine he's got to be like in his 40s, maybe even 50s, because he's up there too. Oh no, although Stephen Rapp is a little younger than Rapp, so maybe Stephen Rapp's age. But either way, Marcus is still like a nervous little kid talking to Irene and busting into her office with just this worried, troublesome look on his face and just apologize. I'm sorry. And Irene's like, whoa, slow down. What's going on? And because Marcus was playing around in the CIA system, he wanted to run some unauthorized diagnostic. Who the hell knows what he was doing? Maybe that's a plan.
Very sketchy.
Maybe that's something in the future. Who knows? But Marcus is fishing around. Marcus doing what Marcus do. And Irene's like, just come clean. I don't care what you were doing. What's the big deal? And he goes, there's been an intrusion. I would have never caught it if I wasn't doing something, off the books. But since I caught it, someone was deep into our system, and it's untraceable. Whoever it was is, one, really, really good, and two, for some reason, very interested in Nicholas Ward, because that's all they took. The complete file that the CIA had on Ward.
I have a nit to pick with this. We were talking about this before we started recording. The fact that Marcus is supposed to be talked up to be this like super hacker, and he can't trick Mike Nash by himself, like find some way to get in there. I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to have the whole bait and switch. It sets up its plot. Like, don't argue plot points. But to me, it just was out of character for Marcus.
I think you're right. If it was as simple as Marcus got beat, but I don't think that's what it was, because Nash wasn't necessarily the one doing the digging himself. He was just the White House liaison to the NSA. And so he basically just disclosed to the NSA what their people needed. And you got to imagine, whoever the cooks hooked him up with is like top of the line NSA.
Mm-hmm.
And with Nash's level of security clearance and Nash's basic understanding of the system, they were able to get in. So I don't think it was like Marcus got beat by this other random hacker who just is anonymous and we don't know anything about them. I think it's just this thing went so high up the ladder. The American president authorizing the NSA and the assistant or the deputy director of the CIA. I think all those factors combined are a solid reason why Marcus wouldn't be able to just detect this, stop it, attack it, end it. I think there are layers there.
Do you think then that should have tripped Irene to suspect that it had to be someone super high up?
But that checks out. That's what she did. I think she realized this has to be something really higher up beyond me and from the inside. So there's a mole. And she one-ups the mole by saying, actually, Marcus, if I give you the file back, can you put it back like we never noticed and the mole would have no idea that we caught them? Marcus is like, yeah, I could just ignore it, but this is kind of a big deal. And Kennedy's like, no, I'm going to alter this file a little bit with some telling information that's like subterfuge to trip up the mole, and then just put it back and we'll act like nothing happened. So I don't think that's just a plot device. I think that's Kennedy being Kennedy.
Right.
And
no, now that I think about it, you're right. You're right.
And remember, she planted details like at the Ward compound in Uganda, if you were going to hit it, go to the northwest corner and there's a power cable, a foot under the ground. And if you slice that, they have no communications and no security system. So then you can come in from the northwest corner. When that's a false cable, and she tells Scott and crew to plant a false cable. Scott's able to set a minefield, and it's a muddy hill. So it's probably the most defensible and least accessible part of the compound. So if Gideon Alma attacks it, you know that Gideon Alma got his info from the mole that Marcus and Kennedy are onto.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's perfectly set up. It's perfectly set up.
I actually got to say that's one of my winners. That whole attack on the compound, but also the intelligence and what Kennedy and Marcus do. For Kennedy and Marcus having a pretty small role in this book, because they're not attached to the action for a lot of what Rapp has to do, he has to do in Uganda on his own. This is a winner still. Absolute winner.
I would agree with that. And I don't know. I love this whole compound scene. Like the chapter before where we get like Scott, sending the boys out to plant that thing and plant the wire, and they're gearing up. They set up wicker on the one side and set up this water cannon. It as I'm reading it, and then like the whole scene when these crazy drugged up people come and start attacking this mudslide. Both of these couple chapters just reminded me of some medieval tale or Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. Even like, I don't know, the way that they were running, like kind of like World War Z, where you have these zombies just like coming up the hill, and they're not it's
like Helm's Deep.
They're losing limbs, but they're still coming.
Yeah,
it was really good writing. Like, this is where Kyle excels. I feel like because it's almost like semi fantasy. It's not super technical, but it has some technical aspects. With some of the machinery that they use in this water cannon, but I don't know, this was executed to a T.
Yep. And it's kind of cool that we're strung along because that action is happening,
right?
And for a second
we don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know what's going to happen. The way they're describing these people hyped up on this Ajali, the sacrament drug that they're on, and they're like walking through minefields once they've lost limbs and still crawling up this hill. I'm like, are they going to get overwhelmed because of this?
Right.
But you learn that even that's a distraction because Mitch and a more secure team are at a heliport a little while away, I think like 7 or 8 miles away, because Alma was also given intel that was how Ward would be evacuated in an attack.
Right.
And so Mitch knows Alma is going to be waiting, and the guys he sent to attack the compound are just a distraction, really. That's how they're able to intercept Alma and capture him thinking that Ward is going to escape on this helicopter. He only brings a small contingent, thinking they'll just, kind of get him. And just enough guys for the taser grenade to take down.
Well, it was mentioned early in the book. He knew it was coming back, and it does. It was pretty cool.
And they needed Alma because now they know Alma got the information from a mole. And Alma's going to basically have to tell them who his source is and who he's talking with. But it's on his phone. And his phone is back at his headquarters, in the forest of Uganda. His temple, if you will, because they treat him like a god.
So I wanted to talk to you about this whole subplot of Alma. And the way he's described early on in the book didn't jibe as well with how he acts once he's captured. I know he's captured, and they even coerce him to film this fake video showing that Chisholm is dead and that he's ransoming Ward, or maybe even Ward's dead. And then, they do this by strapping a bomb to his balls, and then they get him to go along with the whole synthesized, what did you call it? The Najali?
Anyways, the colloquial name is the sacrament, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, freaking Ward is crazy. He's able to get his scientists to super secretly make a synthetic version of this that is actually better. They improved the drug within days. This reminded me of the scene from Limitless where one of the people, they get the Limitless drug and then they get their scientists quickly to make it. I'm like, science doesn't work like that, guys. But anyways,
it shows Ward's resources though. That when you're a trillionaire, you literally have what you want when you want it.
But we're speeding it up. I don't know. You've seen what was that movie? The pandemic movie that everyone was watching last
the one
year.
You were talking about. Yeah.
Anyways, they get the crystal structure in 2 days. You have to sort of suspend your disbelief when you're a scientist and you see these things.
Yeah.
Anyways, but right. So I was saying they get him to go along, lock and step, and to me, I just felt like the character that was shown in the first scene, first chapter, wouldn't go along this easily. For his, especially if he thinks he's Jesus Christ, recome, he would want to sacrifice himself, But maybe that shows it's all a sham. He doesn't actually believe in it.
I was just going to say, I think there's something telling there. I think the reason it rubs the reader, you and I both, the wrong way, is that it is a sham. And he really only plays this persona tough man as a power move, knowing how he will control this village and all his followers, if you will.
It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain.
Right. I think him just defaulting to this pussy, essentially, shows that's what all these tough warlord guys actually are at their core. The second they know they're beat, they're worthless pieces of crap. And yeah, it was weird to watch Alma just be a nobody in the end, because he was built up as a pretty wild character from the prologue. You'd think this is going to be a pretty cool villain, but he ends up not being all important of a villain. He was kind of just a plot device in the end to get wrapped to the mole. So I wish there was more, but I think it also is telling of reality that he's really just a coward.
Yeah, and I guess you couldn't have that strong of a villain in this sense because it makes the cooks,
right?
Be the puppet masters, and that. It just makes them so much more daunting, I guess. Yeah. So, but I will say, go ahead.
I was just gonna say Kyleism. I was gonna pull the Kyleism card. Kyle likes his quirky characters, so getting Alma and that kind of crazy shit out was and the drug is just kind of that little bit of extra quirk, including these sex slaves that Alma keeps and these teenage girls. I feel like he's just showing us the underbelly of these societies because Kyle likes to do that. But then the other Kyleism was maybe not having a clear-cut Vince Flynn style villain. Mm-hmm. Where Kyle does like the gray area, because it's Alma's a clear-cut villain, but he's not the main villain. Are the cooks the villain? Or is Kyle trying to say someone like Mike Nash, who's a traitor to his friends, is a villain? So
we'll get to that.
He's kind of making
Nash
you
is
think...
not the villain. Nash is not the villain.
Nash is not the villain. So is the villain Alma or is the villain the cook? So I just think it's very Kyleistic.
Or is it Nicholas Ward?
Kyleistic. is it Nicholas Ward, to get into the gray zone here.
Right. I will say the one cool thing with the whole, when they go to the sacrament scene, almost death, Rap decides not to kill him himself and instead lets, these slaves and people that he's, tortured for years, I guess. As soon as one throws a stone,
right?
They all attack, and that, I don't know. I feel like I've seen that in some other movie, or read it in some book.
What's that short story where they throw rocks and they stone somebody?
The Lottery.
The Lottery, right. Maybe a little bit of that going on.
You don't want to win that lottery.
That is not the lottery. Yeah, I volunteer as tribute. You don't want to win that one either.
No, you don't want to win that one either.
One other thing you don't want to do is drink the Kool-Aid or take the sacrament. Just one other reference, and I said this before, is Jim Jones in the People Temple. Mm-hmm. I know it's a whole nother continent, but man, this sacrament where Alma gives this speech and like has everyone line up to come receive it from him, and they're all, I want it. And then hours later, all these dead bodies, and Rap's just listening to the chaos inside of Alma's cave because none of them will come inside. They can't disturb, the god of Alma. And then you come out and there's all these dead bodies. And I'm just like, it just makes me think of those haunting pictures of the People's Temple in Guyana. I couldn't get that out of my mind.
Right. That was creepy.
Ooh, heavy stuff, man. Heavy.
So all of that was just a plot device in order to get Rap the phones.
Right.
And to find out that there was this contact, Mohammed Singh, and to get Rap essentially to Saudi Arabia. So Two things. Mitch gives the phones to Ward, who uses his people secretly, or one person secretly, to track the phones. So that the phones are going to come and play later. Right. And the second thing, we now know that there's another player involved, and it's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. I think, is this maybe the weakest part of the book?
The Saudi Arabia sequence?
Yeah. Well, because I'm torn because cool stuff happens.
Sure.
But I don't know if I was bought into like, I thought the cooks were the bad people and now they're in bed with the Saudis. And you go there and Mohammed Singh just is dead already.
Dies.
Okay.
Well, not already, but before Rap can talk to him, he dies.
Right. So it was just like, Rap finds this person, which leads him to this person, which leads him to this person, and then he tracks down this person. Oh, and all of a sudden he's cross-dressing and on a plane back to South Africa. I'm like...
That was the funniest part.
Okay, yeah, we got to get there. I'm like, okay, so I don't know if it was working for me in terms of tempo and the plot development and these like...
It slows
leads.
down.
It slows down. But what was freaking awesome was how the Saudi gangsters or whoever who wants to bury Singh and get rid of him to show no connection between what is happening in Africa and themselves and the cooks, they put him in a construction site inside of concrete. I think he's still alive and they cover him in concrete, or he just dies suffocating from concrete. What a great way. The dogs can't sniff that, I assume, if it's deep enough in the concrete. There's zero DNA evidence because it's all going to be rock solid inside of concrete. I was just like, that is a nasty way to hide a dead body. Like, has Kyle done this
Jimmy
before?
Hoffa's probably buried.
Right. Like, Kyle, you got experience with this?
Probably.
You think you're staying up late at night thinking how you're going to hide bodies with no trace? Because that's just sick. Like that, the concrete thing just, it blew my mind. But it was one of the cooler things I've seen in a thriller.
That was really cool. The other thing that I liked from this section was it brought me back to Kyle or Vince and Mitch in the third option. Sort of taking Mitch to the spy level. He's, he has to get into the country and he knows that, this country, which has more cameras than China or London, even they're gonna find him eventually. Even though I think he gets like some work done on his nose or the person like doctors him up, but eventually they're gonna figure him out. So he has to work quickly. He has these different tools to first track Mohammed Singh, and then once he gets Mohammed Singh's phone from the cement, he then follows this other guy that he saw that he apparently he did some work with back in the
He
day.
knew, yeah.
And then this whole conversation once he saves that guy's life, what's his name?
Bashar Issa.
Yeah, Bashar Issa. And they go to, what do you think of the safe house that him and Hurley had in Saudi Arabia? That was cool.
Yeah. And the little details about it were cool. How Hurley had arrangements done to get utilities like water and gas by siphoning them off from a neighbor so that they aren't on record as connected to a utility company. Like, that was really cool. And then how it's a one-time gig. Neither of them ever used it, but they knew the layout because Hurley liked to have all his safe houses with the same supplies, same layout. So it's like second nature. I love the details like that. And you're right. That's like third option, Mitch is a spy kind of stuff. Maybe even like Kill Shot kind of feeling.
Right. It just reminded me very much like a spy movie. That the whole Saudi Arabia scene was,
right,
scenes from a spy movie. It was really cool in that sense. But I agree with you in terms of it felt tacked on. The whole Saudi thing just felt a little tacked on.
It did. I even mentioned last time how I was kind of disappointed with the cooks just defaulting to, we want to make money and protect our investment, because I know there's more backstory on them. I feel like the Saudi thing was another distraction from the cooks should actually be doing a lot of screwed up, repugnant shit. But instead, we're getting some couple of Saudi gangsters, hitmen kind of cover-up story. I think I would have liked those 10 chapters where the cooks are really fleshed out with their background and their motivations instead of this kind of third party getting involved.
But I guess the cooks are supposed to be this global elite, right?
Right.
And we know the Saudis are, hell, they just bought a freaking soccer team, so they're also a global sports washing at its finest. So yeah, well, I think this is the weakest part, but still some very cool takeaways, and I love some aspects of it.
And again, another Kyleism dropped in with Bashar Issa. He kind of also has his own little monologue. And we talked about how, at least Jed Jones, I think of in Total Power, Kyle likes writing these monologues about someone explaining the state of the world or the future of America. And they often have kernels of truth in them, even if they feel like a little conspiracy-y. Bashar Issa,
we need to monitor that as we go in like these next three Kyle
Order to
books.
Kill.
Yes, right. Pick on that because I don't remember many from like Lethal Agent. Obviously, Total Power there was some, but
yeah, you're right. I picked up on it more recently. I don't remember it from Kyle's earlier ones. I think maybe as he was trying to stick more to Vince and Vince's style with The Survivor, Order to Kill.
You could argue that what's his name has some monologues with Rick
True, Joe Rickman.
Especially when in his videos where we've seen him like be like crazy. So
that's true.
Yeah,
I think in the new sense though, Kyle's doing a lot of them to trip up Mitch, trying to say like, how would Mitch respond to this worldview? And in this case, Bashar Issa is directly saying, "Hey Mitch," he says, quote, "Do you know your weakness, Mitch? No. Why don't you tell me that? It's your unwavering belief in America, in the glory of it, in its uniqueness. I realized it was all lies a long time ago, and now I fear it's your turn. Soon the curtain will be pulled back, and you'll see that your country is no different than any other. Democracy? It's an interesting idea, but if you look at history, it's an idea that burns bright but short. With the widening divisions in your country, and the man that you elected to lead you, that flame is beginning to flicker, and soon you will find yourself in the dark." Like that's got to be a phrase from Kyle's writing about the collapse of American democracy. Bashar Issa is hinting at that with the election, with the total power in your, find yourself in the dark has to be a connection to total power. Like he's warning Mitch, like America's changing and your place in it has to change too.
Yes, very true. So I guess moving on from this, Rap gets more phones. I guess these are the phones that he gives to Ward. But
You're not going to talk about Rap's nice breasts?
no, I was just about to say that.
Okay,
so
all
he,
right. I
he
just wanna
gets
make
out
sure.
with the
Just wanna make
phones in a pretty funny scene where he cross dresses. You know, he's able to get a hold of Claudia. Claudia, you know, sets him up with these sketchy ass people. They do this cool like switcheroo on the highway that's supposed to be like away from cameras, and you know, Bashir Issa, you know, eventually decides he can't go on because he needs to save his family, which, you know, understandable, I guess. And you know, this guy gives him a bag, and it's full of women's clothes. What did you think of that?
Suit up. The one thing that was racing through my mind was Vince's brother on the book tour last year with Kyle. They did a virtual book tour event, and we had a couple of good laughs watching it when Vince's brother was like, Kyle was trying to make the case, Mitch kind of has long hair, you know, it's grown out a little. And Vince's brother goes, no ponytails. No makeup, no ponytails. And I'm just like, oh shit. One book later, Kyle doesn't only do a ponytail, he has Rap cross-dressing, wearing heels, like, and a burqa or whatever it is. Like
some Saudi garb, yeah.
I'm like, no freaking way.
That's funny. Like it's not permanent, so that's, you know, he doesn't have a man bun.
Oh, that was it. That's also what his brother said. No man buns allowed.
No man buns.
Yeah, I guess when it's under the burqa, you don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah, you don't. I don't see Rap as a man bun kind of guy. So,
well, I didn't see him as high heels and, you know, push up bra kind of guy. But, you know, Kyle's gonna do what Kyle's gonna do.
You got to get out of Saudi Arabia one way. You got to do it.
Hey, Claudia makes it happen. Do you think Claudia was laughing while she was setting up that plan?
I think so. This is like a Claudia's touch. You know, she told the dude who got him the clothes to make it look like a woman.
Absolutely,
it's easier to someone who goes shopping and get on a private jet and get out of there. That makes sense.
Right. And again, that global ruling elite that can just hop wherever they want on a private jet, not being traced, take their money, go do illicit things, be home by dinner, you know. So
no questions asked.
Yeah, that's what Kyle's trying to show us, and Rap uses that to go undercover.
Yeah, and he gets out pretty quickly. Rap is freaking globe-trotting everywhere. He's like, first he's in South Africa, then he's in Uganda, then he's in South Africa, and then he's back in Uganda, and then he's over in Saudi Arabia, and then he's back in Uganda. Like, it was kind of throwing me for a loop, figuring out, you know, where in the world Mitch Rap was. I will just touch, you know, this whole time Mitch is undercover, right? And in Saudi Arabia, Mike Nash thinks that he's dead.
Yeah, thinks they're all dead.
Scott and crew didn't win that battle of you know, back in Uganda. And Irene comes to the White House, gives them the information about this attack, and Scott is able to, before like the satellite comes into play, make it look as seem as that they were overrun. And so, you know, Nash is really, really torn up there for a couple chapters. And then we get this interesting chapter where Nash then goes and meets with Irene. And Irene, I think this is the first time we get a hint that Irene thinks it's Mike. Because she's reading him this whole time, that she tells him, she now lets him in on the idea that the fact that Mitch is still alive. I think Irene had a hint that it was Nash.
Okay, I think Irene was testing Nash. I agree. She was suspicious. But I think the opposite happened. I think it's one of the few times Irene got beat. I think Nash played his cards perfectly, because do you remember when Nash is like, okay, Cook already showed me that Ward's alive. I've gone through grief. I've gone through depression. There's even a passage about Maggie, and she's like worried about Nash's insomnia and depression, and we already know he's had PTSD. Nash realizes, shit, if Mitch is alive, and he tells the cooks, worst case scenario, Mitch is alive, he's going to hunt us.
Right.
And if he's alive, that means he played us with the whole Uganda thing. It means he wanted us to think he was dead, which Rap now has the advantage. He's ahead of the game, hunting the mole, and Nash has realized, I'm the mole. Oh, shit. So he goes to the meeting with Kennedy, trying to hide all that, keep it together, and when Kennedy's testing him, Nash goes, I know I passed the test when she reached for her tea. I said, Irene, be straight with me. What the hell is going on? I thought Rap was dead. Do you know something I don't know? And they look at each other. And when Irene reaches for the tea and decides to tell him the truth, I feel like Nash beat her.
Maybe. I mean, I guess if she had anything, she would have told Mitch. And Mitch doesn't know until he gets that text about the phones.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe Mitch was in denial. I really want that chapter from Mitch's side, which we'll get next year. You know, because maybe we get a hint that Rap sort of was a suspicion all along, and then this only confirms it.
I don't know, but evidence that Nash plays Kennedy even further is that Nash knows he needs to know where Rap is in the investigation,
right? Which
means Nash has to get to Uganda and find out what Rap is up to, because once you have the ward's resources on your side, Nash knows it's a loose end. I'll get nowhere unless I can personally find and reach out to Mitch. He gets Kennedy to agree to send him to Uganda. I feel like if Kennedy really honestly thought at this point that Nash was the one, would she have sent him to Uganda? Maybe so Mitch can kill him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nash gets Kennedy to divulge what she knows. Like, I think Nash, he played her and he got what he wanted. He said, send me to Claudia. I'll be the person because Claudia will trust me. I'll be the one who you and I can both find out what Mitch is up to and where he is. And Kennedy says, go ahead.
But maybe she knows that Mitch will get the upper hand. Because he's ultimately better than Nash. Yeah, it's you could sort of take it either way, but
you could.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea to know if Kennedy knew all along and allowed Nash to play into her hand to go to Uganda, knowing that Mitch wouldn't let him come out of Uganda alive.
If he was the mole. If he
was the mole, Rap was going to, they were going to figure this out eventually. Or Kennedy had no idea that Nash was going to be the one to do this. Is it also suspicious that Nash is like, let me get to Mitch. Like, I'll do it. I'm his friend. Because she knows that it's a high up person.
Yeah.
Someone who's maybe even connected with the White House. Nash is the liaison with the White House going back and forth. He's been dropping all these hints to Mitch about the people. He's asking Irene what she thinks of the cooks. So he's letting it, maybe he's over the time, he's letting it know that he has these feelings, or at least she thinks that he's thinking about it. He's thinking about them. If he's asking her what her opinion is, he obviously is formulating an opinion. It's an interesting question. Well, I guess we'll never know. Or maybe we'll find out next book. But
we don't know, yeah. But we do get some of the psychology of Nash here, like where he's at mentally. When, one, he's talking to Irene, but also when the cooks finally tell him Rap's alive. And they put the pictures down saying, you think he's dead, Rap's alive, what the hell is going on here? They're like, Mike, you said nobody could trace this back to us. With Rap alive and on the investigation, can he trace it back to us? And Kyle writes, quote, Nash barely heard anything. He hadn't slept in more than a couple of hours a night since Rap, Coleman, and his men disappeared. Not only had they been friends and comrades in arms, but many had been his neighbors. Their houses stood like mausoleums in the remote subdivision, accusing him every time he passed. Maggie took his insomnia and creeping depression for grief, but that's because she didn't know what he'd allowed himself to be dragged into, and she would never know, despite the fact, in many ways, he had done it all to protect her. For their children. With or without Nicholas Ward, the world was changing. The wealthy and powerful were rising and leaving everyone else in the dust. When the gate finally slammed shut, it needed to be behind them, not in their face. Boom, there's the cover. The enemy is behind the gate, protected by it, not getting shut out with the gate slamming in their face. That line, I thought about the cover with the gate, who's on the right side of it. I thought it was going to be the cooks. The cooks are protecting themselves behind the gate. It's Nash. Nash does this. He does not want his family and his kids and his career stuck on the outside in a world that he wanted. If he was going to play the game, he was going to be on the right side of that game for himself and his family.
Well, yeah, he was turned. He was turned by the cooks, and he thought he was doing something noble, as well as protecting his family. And then I think even when he finds out that Mitch and he sees the Mitch, and then he realizes, oh well, Scott's probably still alive too. I think he's a little bit hurt that they wouldn't have told him.
Right.
Told him.
Right.
So he's like, well, screw these guys. If they think that they need to keep this from me too, I've been through kidnappings. I've been through, bombs with these people. I stormed the frickin' CTCT. I helped, secure suicide vests. Like, they're gonna lie to me that they're dead.
Right.
Fuck them. Like,
make me plan their funeral and pay for it, as he likes to
and
tell
pay
Mitch.
for it. And pay for it. You're gonna let me do that? You were gonna let me do that?
Yeah, he's got some resentment, and I gotta be honest.
Or is that just justification? His justification to himself.
Either way, it fits Nash, because I gotta be honest, from the very beginning, there was tension. There was tension when he got the medals. He hated Mitch for it. He didn't want to work at a desk job, but he eventually did. And Rapp even says, Mike adapts, and so even if he hated it, he's a super soldier. He can adapt to any environment. So he took the desk job, and you know what? He figured out how to do the desk job. And that's why he became the mole, because he took a political position. He found out how to be a politician better than anyone else. And so there was always this tension of Nash was not Rapp. Nash and Rapp were going to come to blows. Rapp has beaten his brains out twice already. He's knocked his friend cold. Nash is not just going to be a punching bag his whole life. And the cooks were that catalyst to push him over the edge. Him thinking they were dead, then realizing he might have been responsible for it, pushed him over the edge. He saw his family life being ruined. He saw his potential career being ruined. He said, enough is enough. I actually might have been better off knowing they were dead.
Yeah.
Instead of them being after me and knowing I was the mole with the cooks, because he knows how those people, what they do to the traitors, Nash is like, I actually might have been better off with them all dead.
I would agree, and I think that it's at this very moment that he even decides, I'm going to kill Mitch.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to kill Mitch, and I got to take out Scott on the way too. Because he could have done one of two things. What he ultimately does, or he could have been like, shit, I got played. I did this by accident. Let me go to Irene and tell her what I did. Or let me go get in touch with Mitch and, say the cooks were in it all along.
Let's fix this.
And it was because of me. Let's fix this. His first conclusion is not to think that. Because I think at this point, if he was to come clean with Mitch and Irene, there might have been some fallout. But it's not like Mitch is not going to try to kill him over this.
No, I don't think so. I think you're
because at this point he hasn't done anything but give information. The president asked for information, and this is what happened. And then he can then tell him that the cooks were in with the Saudis and they wanted to do this, and now you have me. I'm a triple mole or double mole, like a double cross.
Right. I could build trust with the cooks, and if you have me on the inside with the cooks, we can do whatever we want. We can basically control the American presidency for their whole time in office, because I'll be working for them. I'll be trusted by them, but I'm secretly working with my friends.
Because Mike could even say,
so why doesn't he do that?
Basically what he says in his monologue is that I had to do it. I had to give him this information. All he was asking was for something on Nicholas Ward.
Right.
He doesn't know about the Saudis until like right before this meeting with Irene.
Yeah. It was kind of an innocuous ask. And it wasn't even get the file on Nicholas Ward. It was more, hey, can you just work with the NSA and kind of tell them a little bit about the CIA systems and, just work with this NSA person. And then, they need a file on Ward? Okay, I guess no big deal. So how does Nash go from that to not choosing that option we just described?
He feels betrayed.
Right. It's personal.
It's now personal. And like I said, I truly, for everyone who thinks, and I was pissed off when I first read the book and Mike Nash dies. And I was just like, how could you do this to one of my favorite characters? But I think it was great that I reread The Survivor and that we are doing this reread, because you can see the foreshadowing of this.
Right.
if you come into this book and you haven't read those other books, 10, however many years, what is it, Transfer of Power or The Survivor came out, you don't know that,
Extreme
he's
measures.
having extreme measures. He's having these problems with Irene and questioning her during The Survivor. Or you
And
don't
The Last
remember
Man.
that Mitch outed him and they came to blows and
Right.
he wasn't okay with Mitch, kidnapping that one dude, right? And bringing him to the farm.
And his family. Pursuit of
Yeah,
honor.
and then his family got taken. And
his kid gets kidnapped because of basically Mitch putting his name out there, making him a celebrity.
Exactly.
Like, that's some deep PTSD type stuff that he's been harboring this whole time against Mitch.
So I would agree with what Kyle said it perfectly, and his justifications for it on our podcast, in the sense that these two they're too similar to exist in this world anymore, and it sort of made sense to make him the quote unquote villain, if you want to call him the villain, which I don't think he is, or I don't think he's a traitor. He got played, but in his mind, the reason that he doesn't choose that option to come clean is because of everything that Mitch has done in the past, and what Mitch has done during this book, to not trust him, to not let him in on this, and for Irene to also, she just puts him out. They're the ones that made Mike Nash this. Like, it's their fault.
Right.
It is their fault. And Mitch has to deal with that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He's the one who forced Nash to kill himself, essentially. Like,
yeah.
So,
I agree with you, and that's why I think it checks out. I think people's first reactions have been, "What the hell? That was so out of place." I don't think so.
No, it wasn't at all.
I agree with your rundown.
And that's
there.
what makes this book really good.
Yes.
What makes this book really good. We pick nits. We pick nits on every book. Like, you can pick nits on any book. Like, even the great works of fiction, you can find like some flaws. But what makes this a great book is the fact that he was able to connect things from Extreme Measures, from Pursuit of Honor, from The Survivor, from The Last Man,
right,
and culminate that entire backstory, make this compelling case with this mole, and then have him go out that way. Like, Mitch and Irene are the reason this happened in the first place. Like, it's
right.
That's why this book is, in my mind, my final decision for it is good. I've been going back and forth, not like, is it bad? It's not like, it's not a bad book at all. But like, sometimes I waver how much I like it. And now just talking it out, like, that is why this is a really good book.
I agree. Absolutely agree. There's even a line, like, Kyle does that deliberately, where it says, Mike has never been this stressed out before. Not when he recovered from the blast in Afghanistan that blew, his eardrums out and gave him a concussion. He has not been this stressed out, even when Mitch shoved him in front of the cameras and he did not want all that. Even the attack at the Joint Counterterrorism Center, where they took out the terrorists. Even when his daughter was captured, even when his family was in jeopardy, he was never as stressed as now. That is the sign of a man in a bad place, mentally, a bad place with his relationships of friends, and a man willing to do whatever it takes to save his family. We know he's the family man. And he even goes, I'm not going to get my jeans dirty with you hunting me through the woods or whatever. I'm going to stand out here on this pier and with some dignity, let the story of my life come to a close. And that's what he does.
I think he knows that Mitch wouldn't let people find out what actually happened, because Mitch has to assume some responsibility for this, and by doing that, Mitch does a crazy thing at the end and makes him the hero. Yeah, literally everything that Mitch had done in this book to figure out everything, he does it again, and puts Mike Nash out there as the victor, and tells Maggie, his wife, everything that not everything that he did, but instead of a lie, and he goes out as a hero, and Mitch has to live with this. Mitch put that gun in his mouth.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. He kind of did.
Because Mitch even said he was never going to kill him.
Yeah. He's going to ruin him, but he's not going to kill him.
He was going to ruin him, He was gonna make him like be shoveling snow,
Right.
some CIA like house in Siberia.
Right.
If he was able to survive, you know, because he was gonna leave him in the jungle for weeks.
Maggie, she knows. Maggie's reaction obviously is right, just shock hearing this news. But Kyle also writes how it should have been Mitch.
Yeah.
Maggie's eyes told the story of why the hell did you two, Kennedy and Mitch, why the hell did you put my husband in the jungles of Uganda? He's a family man. He has a desk job. His kid's off in college. His little baby at home. It should have been like she's like, in her mind, she doesn't say, but Mitch, it was supposed to be you. You're the one who does all that shit, you know? Not my husband.
And you can argue that Mike might not have been in this place if Mitch had not made Mike Nash the poster child that he did all those books ago.
Right.
It should have been Mitch then too.
Right. Oh man, this is the arc of that's what makes the arc of these books so powerful. It's not just Nash's arc. It's not just Mitch's arc. It's their relationships arc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even when Nash wasn't around for a few books and Kyle didn't use him all that much as an integral part of the story, his arc was still continuing. You could still come back to it. It's just the long game, right? You know, is playing out. Like, if you can argue Lethal Agent and Total Power didn't advance the characters all that much, sure, a big virus is going to change the landscape of America. The loss of the electric grid was going to significantly impact American politics for the future. But those two books didn't really advance the characters and their place in the story as a whole, as a series.
Besides the fact of, I think the only thing it did was to show Mitch that the world is changing and he's getting older and he needs to get out. Like they don't, you know, in those two books,
But that's not new.
There's no terrorists though. Like, I guess there are, but they're not like what Mitch has been trying to go after for the longest time.
Sure, but
they got him doing, you know, Mitch has to sit down and he leaves like that bunker because he's like, find me when you have somebody to kill. Like,
sure. That's
what he does best.
I agree, but Mitch getting out, or it's kind of, it's been done since Transfer of Power.
Since the first book.
I'll put it this way. No one major dies. Okay, I loved Lethal Agent. I liked Total Power, and they're fine and really good books. Lethal Agent, really, really good book. They didn't do much for the series as a series. They did a lot as books. They were great reads. They didn't push the series forward. Enemy at the Gates pushes the series. Yeah. It really pushes the envelope. You don't have a major character dying in Lethal Agent or Total Power. You don't have some big threat to America besides death, right? People dying in the power grid, people dying in the coronavirus. But this book has a different threat to America that's more like philosophical, of our values, our beliefs, our underpinnings, that Mitch has to struggle against and loses a friend in doing. And Irene's career maybe perhaps coming to a close, or at least her official capacity in the government. I like when books have those stakes. The stakes of, oh my God, everyone in America might die. Fine. Those stakes are in every nuclear war movie.
Sure. I mean,
those stakes are in every pandemic story. But the stakes here are not everyone in America is going to die. The stakes here are there won't be an America, or the stakes are there won't be an America where Mitch and Irene are the ones protecting it behind the scenes. Like, I don't know what America looks like after Enemy at the Gates. Mitch and Irene working for American and the government at all look like after Enemy at the Gates. It upends a lot of that. Total Power and Lethal Agent, sure, they were good, compelling stories, but they were, oh my God, if this happens, so many people die stories. Enemy at the Gates is more than the stakes are just a lot of people will die.
Yeah, and it's like those two books are like Memorial Day, and this book is like Consent to Kill, where we see we see an advancement in the character. You know, Anna's death ultimately changes Mitch for the rest of the series. You know, that is a huge impact event in his life. Mike Nash's death and the Cooks becoming this crazy villain are altering, series altering events.
So true. Where Memorial Day was not, it's still my favorite book. It's amazing. There's no Scott. Like, I think there's very little Irene, if I recall. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing Mitch Rapp book, but you're right. In terms of the stakes for the series and those characters, they've got nowhere to go in the book. It's just, let's stop the nuclear attack, stop the terrorist. Where like Lethal Agent was the same thing. There's no real stakes about Irene, relationships, Mitch and Nash, Mitch and Scott, Mitch's family life. Like, it all just kind of hums along. The threat is this disease will kill America, like the nuclear bomb in Memorial Day. That's a great point. Do you think people know what the hell we're talking about, or are we just talking out our ass at this point?
I don't know. I guess for me, we could either, discuss nitty gritty plot details or try to, because I think the big question out of this book is why have Mike Nash die, or why have him be the mole? Why did you do this? Kyle's mentioned that he's gotten some emails. Rod Gregg even mentioned that he got some emails. I'm sure, like I myself reading it was like, what the fuck? So I can't be the only person that did this. Even when we had our patron hangout, people wanted to talk about that. That's the only thing people want to talk about. This is a crazy fucking ending. This reminds me of Brad Thor's, was it The Spy Master, where like the Spy Master, the old man and his wife Laura like get killed. Like, it's like the same thing from Consent to Kill, where Anna dies. Like, it's like, holy shit. It's a talk about moment. Like,
yeah,
you don't talk about, oh shit, Mitch saved the world at the end.
Right, because
that's expected to happen. That's
exactly.
That
happen. Was my point. Yes, yes. So even if people are talking about it, and
like
their first reaction,
it's like the Red Wedding.
Yes, and even if their first reaction is, "What the hell just happened? I hate this," but if you want to talk about it, it's doing something right for the series. Because would you agree, if that was your first reaction, but you wanted to talk about it, and then you had a bunch of conversations about it, and then you reread it, this book gets even better.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here, to discuss our theories. And, hopefully when people are listening to us, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense now.
And let me go back and read it again.
I was thinking the same thing too. Let me reread that.
Right.
See if I come to that conclusion. Because I think when people do reread this, and think about it, we urge you, have conversations. DM us, tweet at us, tell us we're fucking batshit crazy. I think this is fundamentally important for the series. Like, it makes these things interesting.
Yeah. Tell me this is the worst book in the series. Tell me this is the best book in the series.
Not.
I want to know why. But I just want to know why you feel that way. And then I'm going to say, read it 4 or 5 times like I have, and you will move it up that list for sure. Like, you will absolutely move it up that list.
Yeah. No, even just in the midst of talking, I'm moving up the list.
All right. Because I had it higher up the list than you did. I know that. I'm curious to see where you're going to end up here after our discussion. But can I just do a nitty gritty? You mentioned we don't want to get into the nitty gritties, but how cool was that car ride where Mitch is like, where the hell am I going? Nash gave me this iPad with a video of Irene. Why would she reuse the Belarus code? That's a code she would never reuse, and a lot of people had access to. So it's not that secure. Is the same time where he gets the text where Ward remembered, hey, you said you lived with a friend who works at the CIA? Well, we were able to unlock and track the phones. We pinged a tower that a burner phone pinged. And guess who else's phone was near that tower when the burner phone pinged it? Someone in Manassas. Someone on your block. And it's that text message that makes Mitch go, shit, somebody at the compound was the mole, and it had to be somebody who worked at the CIA. He throws the phone on the ground, crushes it, pulls over to a gas station. I want to know what Mitch was doing at that gas station, because he comes back and says, hey, we got to take a detour, like an extra 3 or 4 hours. The guy told me the road's been washed out up ahead. How did Mitch, and what was his conversation like to Scott Coleman? when he went
Yeah.
inside or behind that gas station and set everything in motion.
Oh, and when they're there and it's Nash says, "All right, Mitch, you're outgunned. I got 7 of the best sharpshooters on my team." And then Mitch then like pulls one on him, and the masks go up, and you Scott and Maslick, and Nash realizes that he's fucked now. That was like, whoa,
my God. There's even Nash, I think, looks at Scott take his goggles off,
and he can't look at him, right?
Can't look him in the eye, and he goes, "I'm not even going to look at Maslick. I know that's Maslick. I'm not even going to glance at him. I can't stand myself even to look at him and confirm that that's Maz, because shit, I know that's Maz." The only person he can turn and face is Rap. And that's when Nash goes into his like full-on monologue mode about America and his place in it, and his friendship with Mitch and what happened to him. And that's a scene, man. When those goggles go up, imagine these guns, full tech gear. I'm thinking of something from like an Andrews and Wilson's cover, just in the jungle of Uganda in this isolated like 16-hour drive, whatever it was, away place. And Mitch sits down on this rock, and Nash is like, "What the hell?" And the guns turn on him, and Scott takes the goggles off. Just, oh my God. I loved every minute of that.
Like I've gone back and just reread the last like 3 chapters of this book. Like, 10 times.
So here's a question for you.
Yep.
At the very end, when this happens, here it is. Nash looked away before he could even meet Scott Coleman's eyes, returning his attention to Rap. As terrifying as his dead stare was, it was better than the pain that would be etched so deeply in the former SEAL's face. He assumed the other 2 men were Joe Masnick and Bruno McGraw, but he refused to confirm it. I think right there, and then when Rap goes, "I'm giving you a 5-minute head start for old time's sake," that's where you end the book. The whole chasing Nash up the hill, trying to embarrass him, and Nash killing himself, I think that would have started the next book really well.
Oh, shit. That would have been a crazy start.
You end this book with Rap turning the tables on Nash, and Nash has to fucking just turn and run, and you don't know what happens.
That's too harsh. That's too harsh.
Because we would have been talking about, does Scott shoot him in the back?
Right.
Do they let him go? Where does he go? Like, the conversation would have been, what the hell happens? And instead, after that high drama, like that amazing scene, it cuts to Rap just kind of pondering, climbing some hills, shooting at him, bang, 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 randomly, trying to miss on purpose. I feel like that was a letdown after when my heart just dropped when Scott revealed himself. I feel like
no, but I think then it recovers once we get the suicide.
Suicide, right?
That's such a shocker thing that I don't know. I like your idea, but I think that's too much of a cliffhanger.
It's too much of a cliffhanger, but wouldn't it have been a cool? Okay, so imagine the talk at the end of this book with Nash on the run. You don't know what happens, and then the next book, boom, prologue, the suicide.
I think it diminishes his suicide though. Because then it's the first chapter, and then you have the whole rest of the book, and then we're more focused on the rest of the book.
It's true, because things move on from him so quickly.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think we now have a whole summer, or whole year, not summer. We have a whole, till next summer, next fall, whatever, to think about this, and what Mitch is now going to do, and what are the cooks going to do.
I agree with you. And
I think that's what Kyle wants us to think about.
I agree with you, and Nash's final words do justify it. So I thought for a while that would be a cool idea. But here's what Nash says on the very last page, which I think justifies this ending. "It's been a wild ride, huh, Mitch? The things we've done, the things we've seen, even if we could talk about it, no one would believe it. I stopped to tell you something, man. There's no reason for me to lie anymore, right? So you should just take this seriously. None of this shit matters. Just Claudia, Anna, Irene, Scott, and the guys. That's it. Everyone else is just waiting to stab you in the back. That's what I learned traveling the world, in all the conference rooms, We all die, and in a few years, no one will remember we even existed. Nothing we do means anything. And Mitch says, do you have a point? Yeah, I do. Make peace with the president, Mitch. Even if you and Irene can't stand against the storm that's coming. I know you don't want to join him, but at least he's smart enough to back away. And while I know you haven't listened to me much over the years, you should think about what I'm telling you. It's good advice. He raised his sidearm until the barrel was tucked under his chin. Mike, no! But it was too late. The gun sounded, and he collapsed to the jungle floor. George Goodell does a much better job of that, but that's good shit. You're right, that is a good ending.
Yeah, because now we're thinking about make good with the cooks.
Right.
His last words. So.
And then Irene wanting those 2 glasses at Mitch's house of wine.
You know shit's about to get heavy when she's drinking 2 glasses.
Are they going to make nice? Are they going to heed Nash's advice? From the grave.
I don't know. All right. Well, that's the book. That's the book. All right. So let's just do it. Winners and losers, man. Who's your winner?
I really liked the ending. I thought the last 50 pages were amazing. I liked the mole stuff. I liked Kennedy's plan, the hit on the compound. Bits and pieces of the plot were just rocking it for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say the whole idea of a mole was really genius. And then having the mole be Mike Nash and like we said before, just building upon the foreshadowing. I think doing a reread, go back and reread Mike Nash's books.
Yeah.
Is a great, if you have some free time, you're confused about the ending or you're upset about the ending, go back and reread those books. Extreme Measures,
Pursuit of Honor, Last Man, Survivor, and then Now, and you will get it. You will completely understand it. And I think that the ending was, to me, it's just, Kyle is such a good writer. I mean, Vince is a good writer as well. They're both, I think that's what makes these books so good, because some of the other things, like the plots are good, but the writing's just not crisp. The writing in here was just at times very crisp. Yeah. Nicholas Ward, big winner, great character.
Yes,
great character. Cooks were good.
Also,
I wanted more of them.
I think we're gonna get more. This is like
we're gonna get more,
Batman
right?
Begins, and they're gonna be the meat of the bones.
I wanted the cooks to be the Hank Clarks of the modern Mitch era, and they fell a little short of that for me. Hank Clark is perhaps the best villain in all rap, so falling short of that is not a bad thing, right?
Whoa, we got to have our villains pod. I can't wait to do these at the end of the series.
You know what, we got to do a villains pod. You are right. We got to do Vince's villains, and then later we can do Kyle's villains.
That's a good idea.
Do Vince's villains. Now that we finished all the Vince books.
There you go.
So anyway, I wanted to like the cooks just a tad bit more. I'm not going to say they're the losers. I love the idea of them. I want them fleshed out a bit more. I want to see them maneuvering a bit more, not just trying to protect their money. So I want to see that election cycle. I want to see the transition to Catherine Cook and like how they're going to handle this long-term plan of conquering America, essentially. So I wanted more there, but Nicholas Ward fleshed out exactly how I wanted. I love the hints of his relationship with Kennedy, that they have a professional working relationship. I love Mitch trying to figure out who he was. I love the answers he gave about who he was and his vision for the world. So, yeah, I love this idea of the ruling global elite, and Nick Ward almost a foil to that of, yeah, he's the ringleader of the ruling elite, but he doesn't like all the shady stuff that's going on. He wants to solve some problems.
Right. If you had to pick a loser, what would you say?
I would kind of pick this book apart and say it almost felt hashed together, like the Saudi Arabia scenes being stuck in there to advance the plot. Cool stuff, right? Like the concrete scene. I loved some of the tech in there. Oh, there's another piece of tech. This Google Maps overlay that the CIA uses.
Right.
If you want to trail somebody, there's a Google Maps like overlay app that basically gives you directions and speed limits to trail somebody with, but it keeps you far enough back so they can't get onto you, and gives you like random exits to come on and off, but you won't lose your tail. So anyway, tech like that was kind of cool, but the pacing, the jumping around. You mentioned going from place to place, like we're back in South Africa.
That was going to be my
Uganda.
loser. It was just, yeah, that was going to be my loser. Just the globetrotting for the sake of globetrotting. Sometimes,
yeah,
like didn't Mitch need to go back and forth to South Africa that many times, and I don't know. I guess you have to, but sometimes it just feels like, especially I think Kyle does this a lot, where it's just. Maybe because he globetrots a lot. Like I saw he's in Paris
true.
and he's over in Spain. So
I think he also
likes
just
to travel.
He needs characters to be in certain places.
Sure.
So we just come up with a reason for that character to go to said place.
But I feel like Vince had we started in one place and then we wouldn't necessarily end in that place, but we would like go along the journey. You know, like I think of the third option where we're over in Germany. And then we track him all the way back to the United States. You know, like
it's not back and forth.
Yeah, we go from Germany to the United States, but like it's not back and forth.
Yeah, I think Vince's weaker books were where he'd randomly have a scene like, oh, they have to show up at a Swiss bank, but there's just one chapter. They go to the Swiss bank and then they go back somewhere else. Yeah, I think Vince's strength was when he kept you somewhere for half the book and then put you somewhere else for half the book. It let that setting really develop, which Kyle had here with Uganda. The Uganda scenes definitely nailed that. Love the setting. Love the pacing. Going back to the prologue, right? I'm going to add that as a winner. Mukisa
Dongo was a
Dongo.
winner. Yes.
Gideon Alma. I'm adding the earlier first third of this book and the backstory on Uganda and Alma. Big winner of this book as well. So, more positives than negatives, but a couple of things to pull apart here.
We wouldn't be good critics if we didn't bring some picks.
We said from the beginning we're not going to just be cheerleaders. That no one wants that kind of analysis, that every book is the best book ever. There would be no point to doing this if that was our play. All right, you got to give me your number, though. You got to give me your ranking.
It's that time.
And your number or letter of how you rate this book.
All right, so I'm going to give it A minus. And it's a 90 or an 89, 90. Yeah, that's an A minus, right?
At my school, a 90 would be an A minus. An 89 would be a B plus.
Oh, that's where your cutoff was.
So which one are you going with? Did I get you over the hump?
So originally I had it as like a solid B. Like just because I wrote these notes like back when I read it the first time, and then the multiple rereads, our discussion about it, it's gone up to closer to, you know, an A minus. All right, I'll give it a 90 square numbers.
I'm with you. I'm going an A minus, not a super solid A minus. It's not pushing A territory. So yeah, I'm going 9.1. It's got its hold there. Loved it. Here's a question though. Top 10. Middle of the pack or bottom half of all rap books? Where does it fall? I'm sensing for you it's a middle of the pack. It's like an upper middle of the pack.
See, that's the thing though. When I put it against other books, if I just want to give it a rating, I can't quite give it the same thing that I love Lethal Agent or Consent to Kill, because there was no parts of those books that I really, you know, just didn't like or not you know, had problems with. But it's not like I have like it's high, middle, or low. It's right on that cusp of low top tier. You know, it's at the very bottom of the top tier, or the absolute top of the mid tier.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we'll both agree it's not top 5. It's not bottom 5. We'll both agree to that.
No. It's probably top 10 though. I would say it's top 10.
I was going to say it's probably on the back end of top 10.
But it might be 11. It might be like 11, you know?
It could be a solid, okay, it could be a solid 8. It could also be a solid 11. I think it's guaranteed to be in the 8 to 11 range, maybe 8 to 12. Sure. No, 8 to 11 range in the end. So, great book. Absolutely loved it. And I'm so proud this series is being taken further and deeper than I thought it could be. And after Lethal Agent, Total Power, which were fantastic books themselves, the series needed a gut punch. And whether the discussion, the chatter around it is good or bad, I've heard both. At least there's chatter around it, and the series is getting a spark. It's getting something that's going to kick it into gear. And Kyle's next two are just set up to be bangers out of the park.
Yeah, because I think these books are interesting, especially as an avid reader and someone who loves these series. They're more interesting when you can talk about something like that. You can have a discussion, not about Mitch saving the world, which he ultimately always will, but about why did Kyle make this choice, or how is this going to affect Mitch and Irene in the future. That makes these things more interesting than just,
save the world.
Pick your hero: Scott, Harvath, Mitch, Jack Reacher, Gabriel Long. Like when they just save the day, like, oh yeah, what those are important is the plot has to be cool and it has to be interesting and engaging. This to me goes beyond just a summer read. This is actually intellectually stimulating, and like this is what shows these books aren't just throwaway garbage literature. Like these books are cool and can actually, you can think about them on a different level than just a beach read.
100%. Now we've already talked about our love for the cover. Do we need to do a cover review here? I feel like we've professed our love for Enemy at the Gates so many times.
Yeah, no, I just have to say, real quickly that the covers that they're doing now, since I think since Kyle took over, they've just been amazing. Really good, really thoughtful. You could tell someone actually read this book, came up with this cover. Like,
right.
I think we mentioned it when they did the cover drop. Like some of the letters are behind the gate, some of them are in front of the gate. So you don't really know. We didn't really know, like, is the enemy in the White House or is the enemy outside the White House? Is it coming for the White House? Right. And then the UK version. We talked about this briefly on a Rap on Rap, but so who do you think that is? I think that's Mike Nash. It's got to be Mike Nash.
I think you're right. It was Mike Nash, this stumbling, almost drunk-looking silhouette staring at the White House North Lawn. I would venture this person is in a bad mental state. You don't know their intentions. Looking at the White House, do they hate it? Has it ruined them? Are they going to attack it? Just in a bad state of mind. And I guess some sort of bullet hole or cracking in the middle of the text with the broken glass or surface emanating like a spider web out from the center. Pretty cool cover, and the dark and the white, the colors and the shadow effects show that something ominous is going on relating to this character and it's his relationship with the White House. So yeah, I think that's a stumbling Nash just coping with, I fucked my friends.
Yeah, I think this is the scene. If I had to, not that it is, but just in my mind, after reading it, looking at this cover, this is after he came out of the last meeting,
right?
Knowing that Mitch is alive, and that, I'm the mole. Mitch is going to be hunting for me. Fuck. Well, I now got to take him down, and he's just like in shock that he has to do this now.
Yeah. Man, good stuff.
Very good stuff. All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed our breakdown of Enemy at the Gates. I really enjoyed talking about this book with you, Mike. I don't know. I really had a pleasure. More so than other books. Like, it was very, like I said, it was just very stimulating to discuss. Next time, I don't know what we're going to be bringing to you next time, but it will be a pod and it will be good. So look out for that.
Maybe we got to do Vince's villains.
Oh, that's a good one. Maybe we should. We completed all Vince's books. Let's do Vince's villains. That's a good one.
And then by then it will be November. Time for what's next? Order to Kill.
Order to Kill.
Okay. Nice.
All right.
Kyle's first full novel, in that The Survivor, he had 3 pages to work off of from Vince. So Order to Kill, technically, Kyle's first complete Mitch Rapp novel written by himself.
Yeah, and I think we're probably going to start to pick up quickly his diversion away from, like we said, The Survivor was very much so a Vince Flynn book written by Kyle Mills.
Right.
We're going to see more of a
Wait,
Vince Flynn, like Kyle Mills, Vince Flynn book.
you're right. Order to Kill introduces Grisha.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Which, one of my favorite characters.
I think this is the Grisha drop. I think it's coming.
This is where he's a villain.
Yeah. He's working for that Russian president, Utkin.
He actually might be the best villain.
This is his. Anyway, this is, I think, how he takes over power in Russia.
Yes.
With Grisha. Yes.
So,
Nice. Good stuff.
All right. We always have to do this. We need to thank our patrons. We love you, including our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us on mitrappod.com or on Twitter and Insta at mitrappod. And as always, make nice with the cooks. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crux.